Today is Yom HaShoah, or Holocaust Remembrance Day, and I try on this day to challenge folks to think about not only the blackest episode in Jewish history, but also its wider lessons for the world. Given the historic violence and racism of my own country, I don't think this government has a moral leg to stand on when discussing tolerance or justice with other countries. Until we deal with the ideologies that continue to make the U.S. a threat to global peace and stability, it will far more often echo the Nazis and their opponents. The atrocities carried out in the names of nationalism, xenophobia, and racism in modern history make for a mind-numbing list, as does the number of countries that are culpable in one way or another. But given current U.S. support for ethnic cleansing and mass murder in Palestine, focusing on the U.S. this morning makes a certain amount of sense. This country has never apologized for any of its war crimes, from Wounded Knee to the Filipino democide to the Dresden firebombing, from the My Lai massacre to Iran Air Flight 655 to the Abu Ghraib torture scandal. Nor has it dealt with its use of concentration camps for Japanese Americans or its policies of literal fucking genocide for Native Americans. That history of violence and those policies of racist extermination, as well as the long-term enslavement and persecution for African Americans, inspired the Nazis themselves and countless other horrific movements, including the MAGA cult. And yes, Karen, I'm talking about you and your dipshit red hat with its literal fucking Ku Klux Klan slogan. Go fuck yourself. The world calls on us to be moral agents, to protect the innocent, and to prevent the expression of evil where we can. Sometimes that requires vigilance and action, whether verbal or physical. Think to a lesson of history, namely, that if every Jew in Germany had joined with their Gentile friends, taken up bats, and cracked every Nazi skull in 1923, there would have been no Third Reich and no Holocaust. I think of this often when I'm faced with apologists for the far right, especially the liberals and conservatives who think it a mark of tolerance to grant free expression to neo-Nazis, racists, and other harmful groups and ideologies. This is where my pacifism and love of peace draws a hard line in the sand. Some other lovers of freedom, like Noam Chomsky, trust that sunlight is a good disinfectant and hence defend the right of Holocaust deniers and others to speak. I agree only in that I do not want the state to limit their speech. I would rather someone used a brick to make opposition clear if they cannot manage to convince with words, which are my preferred weapon of choice. Now, hateful people can change, and I think engagement and education are our duty as free moral people. Those in our own circles and lives with awful ideas must be encouraged to learn and grow before the consequences of their beliefs grow to encompass another Shoah. But if they refuse to change, they should be treated as the existential threat they are. Our failure to do so is why the most harmful ideas in world history remain shockingly mainstream in the U.S. There can be no tolerance for intolerance. Agents of hate must be made to change or somehow made irrelevant. They cannot be ignored. Tolerance for intolerance is support of intolerance. To those who defend the rights of hateful, fearful demagogues to speak, I argue that you are responsible for much of the misery and death in our world. Without you, genocide and racism would be impossible. This is why on Yom HaShoah, I want to remind you of the part your ideological ancestors played. Countless millions stood by silently as anti-Semitic lies were published, Jewish businesses were attacked, and violent pogroms broke out. Countless millions turned away as citizenship was stripped and concentration camps were opened. All it takes for evil to succeed is for good people to do nothing, and in doing nothing, they cease to be good people and become further agents of evil. It is not possible to be non-racist or non-evil. You are either supporting racism or fighting against racism, either abetting evil acts or opposing evil acts. There are no neutral spots in this struggle. You cannot claim some centrist ground between the horrors of Nazism and the people who punch Nazis. If you can't tell the difference between those who wish to spread hate and death and those who fight to stop it, that is because you have already chosen a side and you are too dishonest to admit it. The fights for justice, liberation, and peace call to all of us. Human beings are capable of love and empathy in abundance, and we can spread those ideals through our actions. If more of us put in the effort talking to the people we know, we could make real the modern understanding of tikkun olam, the perfecting of the world in Jewish thought. And there would be a lot fewer Nazis in need of slapping.